You don't want to feel like you're in the passenger seat of your own money life, but a lot of people will describe that, and it feels so good to feel like you're the decider.
Introducing The Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hey there, just popping in quickly. It's April Roberts, and I wanted to thank you for being a loyal listener of the Vixen Voice. It means so much to me. And because of that, we're going to be popping in these little announcements because I want you to be the first to know what's going on at the Vixen Gathering. So if you haven't done so yet, click the link below and check out the Vixen Founders Collective. The members who are already in are raving, and we would love to have you join us in the ultimate business consulting, networking, and personal growth community for Gen X female founders. See you there. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Vixen Voice. Today, we are talking about one of my favorite topics, money, but we're talking about it with a twist. I have a money therapist here with us today. Mikelann Valterra is an author, speaker, financial therapist, and master money coach. So we're going to dig into what that means today as well, who helps women worldwide rise around the money fog, transform their relationships with money, and design their ideal life. So I think that we all want a good relationship with money, and we all want to live our ideal life. So stay tuned. We have so many gems coming for you. So first of all, Mikelann, welcome.
Hello, I am so glad to be here. I love listening to your show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I'm blessed because I have amazing guests like you. So that really helps. Awesome. So, Mikelann, my first question, if you've listened to the show, shouldn't surprise you, but I'm honored to interview 100 plus women every year, plus all of my clients. And one thing I've come to notice is we women are beautiful, multifaceted creatures, and we're all slightly different, right? So I'd love to start by asking you, what's a pivotal story or moment in your life that you feel really helped carve this amazing woman that we're chatting with today?
Yeah, I do love that question. You know, there's so many ones that I could pick, but for some reason in this moment, I'm drawn to saying when I decided to go to grad school and study transpersonal psychology, because I had, as an undergrad, studied economics. And then I took time off, as we do, wandered the earth like Cain. And when I decided what I wanted to do someday, I still wasn't clear. I just knew I wanted to study psychology and Jungian psychology and transpersonal psychology. And oh my gosh, did that put me on a different course for my life. And I found my field around financial therapy and things we'll talk about after grad school. So it really changed the course of my life. If you asked what I thought I was going to do at, 18 or 19, I would not have said, someday I'll be a money coach.
I love it. So you have been a money coach from way before being a money coach was popular, right? Because it's kind of the new trend.
Oh, I know. It's so funny. I went to the Financial Therapy Association conference, and everybody called me the OG, the old guard. And I was like, I'm not that old, good Lord. But yeah, I've been doing this over 25 years.
I love it. So tell us a little bit, what exactly is financial therapy and what's a master money coach?
Excellent question. So, it used to be once upon a time that people, when they wanted to dive into dealing with money, they would either see a financial planner and look at, investments and net worth, and let's talk about retirement. Or maybe they'd see a credit counselor and go, oh my gosh, I've got all this pain around debt. Let's get a debt plan going. I love both those fields. They're sacred. They're important. And many people have both. We want to build net worth. We're all trying to not have debt. And neither of them is well trained to deal with the emotional side of money. So
Yes.
money coaches do both. We look at the emotional side of money and the practical side. The number one thing I hear, April, when people call me is, I'm tired of not feeling in control of money. And that's a big question, and you know better than many, many people how complicated and how much is under that statement, right? But stepping into control around money, a lot of it is on the emotional side in terms of how we feel about our history around money, how we feel about our spending. I mean, all that stuff that you and I can dig into. But there's also a skill set, right? How do we learn how to manage our cash flow? How do we learn how to plan our spending? So money coaches dive into all of that. And then financial therapy adds in a lot of that deep emotional side. But a lot of times nowadays you hear the term money mindset, right?
Yes.
A lot of the psychology of money. I mean, there's, the phraseology you hear nowadays, you're right, wasn't what we used 20 years ago. But the emotional side of money is as emotional today as it was probably 100 years ago, right?
Yeah. I love your bringing that up because the term money mindset is a little pet peeve of mine. In fact, the term mindset is a pet peeve of mine because as human beings, we're so much more than what goes on in our minds, right? And I feel it discounts everything else going on. Like, it's like that's the tip of the iceberg, and there's everything else down here, right? And I too use the term mindset sometimes just because I'm meeting my client where they're at. Like, that's something they're comfortable with. So, how do you address that when you're talking with your clients? Like, do you see this a lot, especially now that that's become like a buzzword?
Oh my gosh. Yes, you and I are speaking the same song here. So, when my book came out last year, the Rise Above the Money Fog book, it's one of the things that I actually talked about that I find that the psychology of money is popular in general, just to widen it a little
Yes.
bit. And even, you've got shows or articles on Oprah Magazine on what's your first memory of money. That's why you are the way you are. And I don't mean to quite downplay that. That's fascinating, juicy, deep, important stuff. The problem is if you start with, we'll say, mindset, if you start with the psychology, there's a lot underneath it that hasn't been addressed. And so even when people go, I get it, I've studied all of this, we can get into talking about abundance, another big buzzword, right? I understand why I am the way that I am around money, but then why has nothing changed? Why am I still stressed around money? Why am I still in a fog? Why am I still not sure if I can afford to go to Hawaii? Why am I still carrying around a little bit of credit card debt, right? So we want to put everything in its place. Mindset and the psychology of money and our childhood stories around money, really, really important. And we need to combine that with a stronger skill set around money. And sometimes there's this feeling that if we just get clear about our psychology, everything will solve. It can actually serve to make us feel worse. I've had people call me and say, I've done all this mindset work, and now I just feel more shame because I feel like I get why I'm doing what I'm doing, but nothing's changed. So, everything has a place, but we want to make sure we've got a strong foundation to really dive into some of this on.
Well, I love that skill set. And, another thing that's coming up for me is comfort. Just comfort talking about money, which, I mean, I was a financial planner for 16 years. So, if friends would share things and I just like dig in and then I'd see them freeze. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Talking to me about money is like getting naked in front of the doctor. Like, it's uncomfortable for you, but there's zero judgment for me. Like, this is just what I talk about every day, right? So I'm sure you deal with that a lot, right? And I know when you get a skill set around money, it helps you overcome the comfort, but sometimes we got to break through the comfort so that they even start flexing the skill set. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so when your clients come to you, what are you usually like starting with? You shared that one thing you hear the most is control, but what other things are coming up? And do you see, I'm curious, I don't know if you work with both sexes, but do you see it equivalent? Because I work with all women, right? And so one thing we have to do is get them comfortable talking about money and talking about revenue. And in my experience of being in male dominated industries, I just didn't see that with men as much.
It is different. Yeah. So, I mean, to the first question, initially, I will often ask people things like, tell me your current pain points around money. And that helps to just let's start talking about how you're feeling and what's not working. The other thing that I find, April, is that a lot of people will call a money coach like myself when they're in transition. That's a very common time to try to either up-level your relationship around money or simply say, guess what? Something's not working. And now that I'm on the other side of a divorce or empty nest or new job or whatever the case may be, it's finally time. And, you and I both work with a lot of amazing women that have done a ton of work in a lot of areas of their life.
Yes.
Money often feels like the final frontier for a lot of professional women to finally dig in and talk about it. So we do start off talking about not only the pain around money, but how do you want to feel about money? How do you want to feel about your relationship to money? And then, from there, we look at, okay, first step, let's try to get clear about where we are. And that sometimes goes to cleaning things, clarifying, simplifying things. I'm a huge, huge advocate of elegant financial simplicity because people have really complicated stuff, right? But to your point about, men versus women, so money fog is when it's the feelings that arise as a result of not being clear about our money. When we feel vague, and fog stands for when we're in fear, overwhelm, or guilt around money. What's interesting is, men and women both suffer equally from being in a money fog, but women will acknowledge it more than men. And women feel more anxiety around money than men do. So, it's not that women are bigger overspenders than men. They're not, right?
No.
Overspending and underspending is not a gender-based thing. What we spend on might look different. But women feel the anxiety around money greater than men do. So they report greater feelings around stress around money than men do. And, the other thing that you and I know, April, is women do have less in the way of savings than men do. So this is not all our imagination, right? I mean, there's real things that a lot of women are trying to address.
No, absolutely. I had helped David Bach do his national seminar for women, and he's written this book, Smart Women Finish Rich, and the stats are amazing when you get into the stats of the differential. And another thing that was interesting that I learned is most couples agree that they should discuss large purchases, but how they define large purchase is different. And I'm forgetting the numbers, but it was something like for a woman, it's like $400. And for a man, it was like $1,400. So I think, one thing we advocated was for couples to have a money date once a month where they're getting on the same page about money. Because I'm sure you see this. I've heard the stats and I've seen it in working with couples. A lot of disagreements come up over money.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I could write. Maybe this will be one of my next books. No, I know the next book, but the couples one, in our house, it's really funny because, as I shared, I just had my 1-year wedding anniversary, and it's really fun and funny for my new husband to have married a money coach. Because it's interesting, right? I mean, he's not used to being in intimate relationship with someone who, like you, I'm like, let's talk about money, and let's talk about money a lot, and let's talk about this, let's talk about that, It's interesting, it's fun, it's fascinating, and he loves it because he's never felt so in control and on top of money, very different than his first relationship, but feels sometimes like, whoa, okay, it's such a new place to be, particularly when someone like me or like you, we're normalizing it. We get to talk about it. It doesn't have to always be that big of a deal. And the monthly money date, love, love, love. And I would push it more than that, because if you're sitting down with your beloved and you're talking about money 12 times a year, it's still kind of heavy. It's still sort of a lot. It's still like, we got to bring up whatever the big thing is for this month, And so how can we keep normalizing it and make it just not that big of a deal? And it really helps when you get into the messages we pass to our children. When they see that mom and dad get to talk about money, guess what? It's just sort of normal. Then kids normalize it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that passing on theory. So I love that you've become a thought leader in financial psychology and you help really your clients and women decrease their anxiety around money. So talk to us a little bit about anxiety with money because it's interesting. Just in my personal relationship with friends, I'm seeing a lot of anxiety about money popping up right now. And these are from women doing well. I use quotes because things have gotten more expensive, right? And just life has changed, etc.
And doing well is relative, again, as you and I know. So, you know, like I mentioned, women do experience higher levels of financial anxiety than men. And regardless of the comparison to men, we just want to feel better, right? It's like, how do we not feel anxious around money? And so part of it is there's the sort of 1-2 punch, if you will. Yes, we do want to look at our personality around money, our personal motivations around money. We're all wired differently. There's nothing wrong with being a quote spender versus a saver. We just want to know ourselves, know our triggers, right? The dilemma is when we're on the edges. Extreme spender, extreme saver. We want to stay away from the edges. And so, you know, there is a certain amount of emotional, psychological diving into knowing ourselves that helps us feel better about money, but we've got to combine it with how do we stay clear? How do we stay out of the money fog? Because the number one cause of financial anxiety is money fog. When we are not clear about not only what are we spending, but, you know, a lot of people, April, they don't know how much they need to earn. They don't know what does their slightly more idealized life cost. And what would we need to do to earn that so that we could live this life that we like even more? You know, all of that I would put in the realm of financial clarity and really getting clear around what do I want to earn? What do I want to spend? What do I want to save? It's like you want to drive your own money car. You don't want to feel like you're in the passenger seat of your own money life, but a lot of people will describe that, and it feels so good to feel like you're the decider, you know, and the question is, well, how do you get in the driver's seat and how do you get clear? But that's, you know, that's so much about what all this is about.
Well, and I love the idea of getting to know yourself and your habits. And I think when you can tie your core values into it, because for me, one thing that motivates me to make good money is I'm a giver and I don't want to feel badly if I want to give, right? Like I don't want to feel guilty about giving.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, there's the reverse of entitlement, etc. You have to give intentionally and carefully, but I don't want to feel constricted in giving. And so that's a huge driving force for me. And I think we all have our different things. And I know a big thing you talk about is like, where do we spend our money? So do people have different personalities when it comes to that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, they do. And I would say I label 4 main personalities. So there's the 2 biggies that a lot of people will use different words for is the liberty personality, which is really driven by freedom. And then there's so many different ones here. And then there's the safe harbor personality type that is driven by security. And those are big. And we all have a liberty side, freedom. We all have that safe harbor side, security. But we're also motivated by love, which is a lot of, you know, what you just brought up, generosity. And I call that's the aid worker personality type. And then there's the mission-driven personality type, which is really motivated by power. And, you know, power gets a bad rap, April, with women. And I know you've talked about this and you get it more than anyone. We need power and a strong power component as women to drive our mission forth in the world. You know, like if Mother Teresa were still alive and I was typing her money personality, right? She would score off the charts as a mission-driven personality type, which is really motivated around power. What can I do with money to see my vision made manifest in the world, right? We need all 4 of these types, but we're all really interesting individuals, and we all tend to have one that's a little bit bigger than the others that really influences us. And so, you know, if you're the aid worker personality type and driven by love, that's going to come out in giving and generosity and, you know, so many different ways that can look. And it's so helpful to know that about yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And talking about women in power, I am proffering, you'll see it in our messaging this year. I'm calling prowess the feminine version of power. So
Ooh,
we're
I
going to
love it.
adopt that.
I love it.
So, when a client comes to you, first of all, I'm super curious. How do you usually work with your clients? Like, do you combine the therapy with the coaching? Are they two separate things? Like, how does that world work? Because I know you have a lot of ethics involved in what you do. So, where does that work in?
Yeah, good question. So there, I combine them. I combine them. So, I mean, it depends on if I'm teaching a class or a workshop. Once a year, I do a big retreat for women, and it's very much weighted on the emotional, psychological side and the money personality side. So, that's we're not diving into and what'd you spend at Safeway, on those retreats. It's a real
Right.
personal growth extravaganza. But in terms of one-on-one work, we definitely combine them. And so, I start with let's get clear. Let's look at where the money is going. Let's move into directing where you want your money to go. Let's create a monthly spending plan process. Let's build into an annual process where you're looking at where do you want your money to go all year? That brings us to an earnings plan, right? What does this mean we need to earn to live this life? And then from there, we go into childhood money stories, because a lot of the juice of we'll just say the psychology of money is in our childhood. That, most of us feel the way that we feel about money from back how we were raised. And so that's where a lot of money fog starts. That's where a lot of the personality stuff is. And then we all have crazy money stories, April. And part of it is normalizing story. I have yet to meet anyone that has a boring money story, right?
Right.
Most money stories could be made into blockbuster movies. And we often wish that wasn't true because we all think we should have the steady Eddie boring story where nothing bad or super crazy good ever happened. It was just, yes, everything goes according to plan. I don't know anyone where everything has gone according to plan,
No, that's
including
not
me,
life.
right? It isn't, and that's okay. And so it partly is what creates our personalities around money. It's also why we want such a strong skill set around planning for the curveballs that happen so that you always know no matter what you feel like you're okay. So, the answer is I combine all of it, but I start off a little bit more on the practical side.
Yeah, so I'm curious because I know my parents were very intentional in raising us and then even like interacting with their grandchildren around money because they wanted to cultivate a certain mindset. I'm using air quotes.
Yeah.
How much, like, I mean, here's the old question: how much is nurture versus nature, right? Like when it comes to money psychology.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I wish I knew that exact answer and someone would pay me $5 million. My personal opinion, the nature versus nurture. I mean, this gets into money personality typing. Let's dive down the rabbit hole and talk about what's your Enneagram or your Myers-Briggs and, how much of that is nature versus nurture. A lot of it, I personally would put 60 to 65% on how you're raised. And then I would put 35% on your traits that you're born into the world. Now that's me looking at this for 25 years and different people are going to, give you a different opinion. But I'll use me just as a quick example. One of the traits that I have is high sensitivity. I am an HSP, a highly sensitive person. And, we're estimated to be about 20% of the population. So it's not that unusual to be highly sensitive, but we're still in a minority. Well, that trait of having a highly sensitive nervous system that goes all into your emotional system as well, you're born a high sensitive. That is a genetic trait, and that absolutely combines and impacts your personality around money with how you're raised. So this is why we're so bloody complicated, because I don't think my sister was born with a high sensitivity trait. So, here we are being raised in the same family, giving the same supposed messages around money, right? But you end up with different money personalities in the same family. People are fascinated, and, I know you've heard this too. People are shocked that their siblings can be so different than they are around money and also just in general. And then you'll hear people go, oh my God, we have the same parents. We have the same family. How could we be so different, right? So it just kind of showcases this interesting, fascinating combination that we all are.
Well, it's interesting too, and I don't want to get us too far off track, but there's 5 years. I'm the oldest, my sister's the youngest, 5 years. My sister lived in a different household than I did in high school. Like things change, right? Things happen in there. And I talked about this with a good friend of mine who, like, her parents got divorced when she went to college. So her younger siblings had a completely different household. I think, one, we have to be realistic about that, but I get what you're saying. And the reason I ask this question is I have so many of my clients who are really set to create a legacy for their family and give good money traits to their children, right? So I guess I'm asking, like, what probability of success do they have here? How much influence do you feel? Or, you talked about setting an example for your children, but how important do you feel that is?
Well, so what the research shows is, and first of all, it's a huge, we absolutely do impact our kids. The question is, what is it that's impacting them? Is it our words or our actions? And all the research shows it's our actions. It's not that we're not going to stop talking. We do want to model openness around talking about money, which I would say is actually a behavior. We're used to modeling regular, ongoing money conversations. Like, for example, you don't want sitting down and talking with your kids about college money, which is a huge conversation, to be the first time you've sat down and talked to your kids about money, right? It's like this is just one conversation that sits on top of years of bigger and smaller conversations. And your kids watching how you model giving, how you model talking about generosity, how you model your values is really what you're talking about. They're trying to pass on their philanthropic values, might be one way to frame some of that. I have also a lot of clients that want to move into greater stewardship. They want to feel like they're good stewards of their wealth, and they want to pass that on to their children. So again, yes, part of it's talking about it, but also modeling and being open so that your kids actually know. If you're giving money to your favorite charities, you want your kids to know that because that has the biggest impact.
I love it. So the big question is, does money make you happy? And I have my personal answer to this.
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah. Does money make you happy? So it's a qualified yes or a qualified no, depending on which way you go at it. So I will bet dollars to donuts that all your listeners have heard of Maslow's hierarchy, right? The hierarchy of needs. And, the short version is our basic needs, which tend to be, health and security and food and shelter, warmth, all that good stuff, towards the bottom of this pyramid. And then as we go up the pyramid towards greater and greater levels of self-actualization, you get into, connection and community and spirituality. And, again, we're moving up to greater levels of self-actualization. Well, money is really helpful at the bottom of that hierarchy. If you don't have enough money to drive a safe car and live in a home that properly houses you and educates your children, right, then more money will correlate to making you happier at those levels. But once you hit a certain level, more money does not make you more happy. And so, a lot of times people try to quantify this. The Easterlin paradox started looking at this back in like 1974, trying to figure out, does more money make you happy? The most recent study was done out of Purdue. And Purdue did it, I think it was 2019. They published it off of 2018 data. And they came up with a number, April. You'll be happy to know. The number they came up with was $95,000. That if you have less than that, then it would help to have more. But over $95,000, it doesn't correlate to greater levels of happiness. Now, the moment you say that, everyone's going to scream, but. What if you have a family of 5? What if you live in a little expensive area? Were these people married? Were these people single? What country were they in? Blah, 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 blah. But don't lose the point, right? The point is at a certain level of money, more money does not equal greater levels of happiness. And at a certain level, diminishing returns. When it takes a lot of energy to keep going, right? So the number is different for everyone. That's why I know people, darn it, I want a specific number, But to a certain level, to get your basic needs met, yes. But, again, I know the greatest correlation to happiness is actually the quality of social relationships and connections. That's not about money. So, money is in this picture in terms of living a life of our values, but it's not about the money.
I don't know why this just came to my head, but I've been in circles or at events of very high levels of money, and I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
I'm certain there are people with tons of money, and I know some that are fun as can be, but it does not definitely correlate to how great your connection is with that person.
Well, can I throw one thing in just for fun?
Yes, please.
Money makes you more of who you really are.
Yes.
So if you're naturally a really
agree.
generous person and you win the lottery, you're not changing into a different personality. You're just, there's more money to be more generous with. And if you were, I don't want to swear on your beautiful podcast, but if you're not a very nice person and you win the lottery, guess what? You'll be a bigger, not very nice person, right? So more money will just make you more of who you are, which is why it's so important to know who you are and know what your values are.
100%. It's an amplifier. So, is there harm in comparison? I chatted earlier today about someone was talking about keeping up with the Joneses and how they had to get out of that mindset, right? But how much do you see that come into play with your clients?
Yeah, no, short answer is huge harm, huge harm. Yeah. You're talking about comparison theory, and comparison theory just says that we tend to think that we're happy compared to what other people have or don't. And it's the perceived gap between what I have versus what I think other people have around me, which is why it's called keeping up with the Joneses, exactly right. And, unfortunately, we tend to compare ourselves to people that have more. This whole comparison theory might make us feel better if we spent time comparing ourselves to people that had less, right? But we naturally tend to go the other direction. And this is a big topic that I know you've brought up and everyone's talking about nowadays. What is the impact of social media on comparison? Because it used to be that I didn't carry the keeping up with the Joneses, right? I didn't carry the Joneses around in my pocket. I didn't compare myself to everything that I saw on whatever your favorite feed is. Probably people will say Instagram, Facebook, whatever, So it's really important because, if you go back to happiness generally increases as we get older. People don't actually always know that, which I think is cool. We actually get happier in general. The one thing that will reverse that is envy. And so this is the problem of comparison. And if we really get into comparing ourselves on social media and why it's correlated to, all these things we keep hearing about people being less and less happy. It's a complicated subject, but you and I know that social media is absolutely implicated. It absolutely is. And so, where do we go with that as a society? And different generations are impacted greater than others. I am Generation X. I'm in my mid-50s. So I'm Generation X personified. I'm like poster child, right? So for my generation, yeah, I am impacted by social media, but I can kind of take it or leave it. I'll go off it and on it and whatnot. It's very different than, some of my clients that are millennials, some of my favorite, most awesome people. And they're more impacted because they're in it and on it generationally more, and it's having an impact on them. So it's a really, really good conversation.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, I brought this up earlier in a recording. I was watching Special Victims Unit, Law and Order from like 2017 this week. And they were like, oh, there's this blogger and she's really excited because she got 1,000 views, right? And that was just like 2017. What are we talking, 8 years ago? And now it's like people would be like, oh, that's nothing. And when you think you had 1,000 people see your business like for free, like that's extremely impactful. But yeah, the social media, and then there's the micro judgments all day long. We could go down a huge rabbit hole about the effect on our psychology.
We could. Yeah, I will say the tip I give people is don't follow people you don't personally know. That right there will help with the envy machine.
Yeah, I like it because you understand the highlight reel. I love it. Yeah, and when you were talking about the comparison, it reminds me of like the book Mind the Gap, like don't get lost in the gap. And, for me, like celebrating wins really overcomes that. And I know you like to talk about gratitude and that helps. So share with us how like a gratitude practice, you see it affect your client's relationship with money.
Yeah, I think everyone has heard a lot of times it comes up in conjunction to a spiritual practice, which I love. I've got a lot of very spiritually oriented clients and I am too, right? So a gratitude practice is simply spending time thinking about what are you grateful for. And it does many, many things, but one of the things it does is it automatically puts you in the zone of not comparing yourself to everyone that has more, but the other direction, right? I'm so grateful that I'm healthy and that my son's doing well. And, just listing out what you're grateful for elevates your mood. If you look at, just to be a little bit nerdy here for a second, if I scan your brain when you're doing a gratitude practice or writing in your journal, it's actually activating the brain's reward circuits. And so your brain actually glows happier when you're spending time thinking or writing down, even better, all the things that you're grateful for. And so people tend to spend from a more moderate, even keeled place when they're really centered in their gratitude, as one of the big impacts are on our relationship to money. But you're also just happier when you spend time in gratitude.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. I wish we had hours and hours to talk about this, but I also believe in honor your time. So I want to pivot a little bit here, Mikelann, if that's okay with you, because I kind of want to talk about your journey. So I know you shared with me that you love tango. And in fact, I believe your husband was your dancing partner, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it is one of my favorite topics. I can't help it. I'm crazy addicted to Argentine tango, but I just connected a little bit to money. I always tell people it can't all be about the bills. What's important to you? What do you want to protect? What's your tango? So many fascinating women in midlife come up with new, wonderful places they really finally want to spend their time or can spend their time, right? And for me, it was dancing. So it means that I choose to spend a fair amount of money in this. And, I tell everyone, all my clients, you can do anything you want. You just can't do everything you want. So what is it that you want? What is it that you want to protect? What do you value? And for me, it's dancing. And so I'm going to spend my money on dance lessons and dance classes and dance shoes and dance travel and on and on and on. So, and I met my husband at a tango house party of all, it sounds so old fashioned, right?
Nice.
But the tango house party. And, we're social dancers. We also compete. We also perform. It keeps us healthy. All the dancers out there listening know that it's just so connecting so many parts of yourself when you're a dancer, your brain, your heart, your sensuality. I mean, if I ever get dementia, I'm going to be so pissed off because it really keeps us thinking, some of the stuff is so hard to learn and then it's so fun. So there you go.
I love it. That's a great reason to dance. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective before. So beautiful. So I ask that because I always like to chat with my guests about when they step into their feminine essence or energy. We'll call it your prowess, right? So when is that for you, Mikelann?
That's an easy one, and it's so hard for me, is I am debating competing at the National Tango Championship with my husband, Robert, and talk about putting myself out there in all of my feminine glory, cute little tango dress and every skill I've soaked up over the past 7 or 8 years. And it is so scary. I've had to work a lot on overcoming stage fright. It's so funny, April, because I think I'm a professional speaker. Put me in front of an audience, great. Give me a microphone, great. Put me in front of judges on a dance floor in 2 or 3 inch tango shoes and tell me to go. My legs start shaking. So it's been a wonderful journey around stepping into power, stepping into visibility, stepping into claiming my space in a new, different, and higher way for me. And it's been hard and fun and rewarding. And sometimes it's been not good, right? I mean, it doesn't always work. You botch a performance and boy, oh boy, does that take me low. It takes me a couple weeks to recover, right? And then you go at it and you do it again. So for me, it's also about grit and determination and not giving up. And, as an adult, learning new hard things and being okay at being bad at something. And is it okay to look like a fool while you're learning some crazy weird thing? And that's its own journey, is continuing. Am I willing to put myself through not looking my best and then just keep going? So that's how I would answer that. It's right in front of me.
Well, kudos on that journey. And really, I mean, I know it's something you're passionate about, but performing's a little different. And, we do suck at everything we first start at. And as we get older, it's harder for us to do that, right? But that's how we continue to grow, is by taking those steps and being willing to embrace that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then what color would you say your feminine energy is?
Violet.
Oh, I love it. Beautiful color. Very deep. Well, wonderful. Mikelann, as we're wrapping up today, what final words of wisdom or tips do you have for everyone listening?
I want people to honor the journey that they're on around money and know that, I mean, I know it's often said it's not about the destination, but it isn't. We're all on this fascinating journey around money, and you want to feel like, yep, I'm on a journey. I'm going to keep going. There's some wonderful vistas in front of me, and, you can do it. And some people want help and a guide and a companion, and other people just keep moving. But it's all good. It's a journey, and I think it's a great way to think about it. You're in the middle of your money story, and it's going to keep unfolding.
I love it. So check out Mikelann's book, Rise Above the Money Fog. And would you mind sharing, of course, in the show notes, and we'll share with our audience all of your pertinent information, but quickly share the best way that they can follow you or stay in touch with you?
Yeah, that's an easy one. So I would go to Seattle Money Coach. Seattle Money Coach. I've got clients all over the United States, April. I'm in Seattle, right? And so I would go to Seattle Money Coach. I would grab either a free discovery call if you want to chat with me. I love my newsletter. I love my writing because I'm a huge writer. So if you want to hear some of what we've been talking about today in little bite-sized, fun little articles around, your journey around money, then go ahead and subscribe to the Conscious Money newsletter. And it's all right there on Seattle Money Coach.
I love it. All right. For everyone listening, as you know, I always say the world needs more love. So this week, just focus on how are you going to love yourself in your money journey. You deserve to have everything that you want. So let's heal these wounds and move forward. And let's normalize talking about money so that we can move forward. Thank you, Mikelann. It's been so beautiful. I appreciate it. And for everyone listening, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to today's show notes, including links to all the resources we mentioned, visit vixengathering.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of The Vixen Voice.